Okay, great. Thanks for everybody getting back on time. And we're going to get into our next module. Our next module is about material processing and shredding. And our speaker is John Krakowiak from GEEP. And GEEP has many facilities around the country as well as Canada as well. So John's role with GEEP is to provide overall direction and leadership to the operational activities at their Grand Prairie, Texas facility. As a matter of fact, I've had an opportunity to tour and visit GEEP's facility in Texas, and it's quite impressive. Since joining GEEP in 2009, John's expertise as a certified Six Sigma Black Belt has led to numerous operational improvements at all of their locations. Prior to joining GEEP, John was a general manager for both Valspar Corporation and Henkel Industries. John spent 22 years in the oil and gas industries with Halliburton Schlumberger Weatherford. A native of Chicago, Illinois, John graduated from Purdue University with a degree in electrical engineering technology, and he is a member of the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. Let's welcome John Krakowiak.
That sounds more impressive than it really is, but we'll go with it. The one thing we want to talk about, with the exception of the remarketing process of the recycling industry and electronics, you have two general areas of processing. One would be manual disassembly, which is used quite often by a lot of different companies. The reason for that is because of the fact that there's a lot of things that can be taken apart real easy. It's less manpower, and we'll get into some of those other things as well. But primarily, it's an easy process, and it's easy entry into that method, and a lot of reusable parts. The other one is mechanical shredding and sorting, and that is used primarily for high volume processing and large items that cannot be easily disassembled manually. Most of the common e-scrap items that are manually disassembled are computers, laptops, and servers, primarily because of the ease of taking those apart. There's really little work to be involved in taking those apart. CRT monitors, LCDs, and televisions, again, the ease of taking these things apart, they're very easily taken apart. So we have a process there that you could do probably 10 to 15 easily per hour, per man hour. So that's real easy to do. Cell phones and tablets, they're also in that process of manual disassembly because of the value of the product that is inside those units and the resellable products. Some of the less common items that you would use would be set-top boxes and printers. Printers primarily because of the fact that they're a little harder to take apart and the value of some of the items in there does not warrant the excess manpower that you're using to put into that. Mine's going to go real quick. It's not going to be like Jim's and Paul's because they've talked about most everything that we've already wanted to talk about already. But some of the benefits of the manual disassembly is a lower cost of entry. And basically, the cost of entry on this is a little bit of square footage. Some people have started this type of business in their garage. And the tools that you need, equipment cost-wise, you need some drills, some screwdrivers, a hammer, a few things here and there. But the entry cost of this is really relatively low. Head count is probably going to be your most expensive part of that whole entry to get into that business. The reuse of removed parts, touched on that. But the benefit of that is a lot of the parts that you get off of this equipment can be reused. Like in Paul's business, he takes and he'll resell for the products that he gets out of there. If he can't sell a full unit, we'll sell it as parts. A lot of the electronics that we see nowadays is obsoleted within a year, 2 years max. So a lot of the older equipment that you take apart, you can take that equipment, take the parts, the rollers from printers, etc., and you can sell those because they're not making them anymore. So there's some return on your investment in there as well. There's a lot fewer regulations excuse me, with manual disassembly versus a shredding operation. because of the cost of shredders, regulations, we'll talk about it again, is there's air testing, air quality testing, possibly a lot of other regulations involved in that, safety, etc. There's job creation for manual disassembly. Job creation, there's a lot of states that will give you some tax benefits or some credits if you're hiring people to work in the green industry. And that's a type of credits that we're all looking for, to where we can get some money just for doing what we want to do to make money. So there's a lot of job creation in that process. Improved quality of commodity stream. When you're shredding, you have a lot of commingled product, as most of us in here have done shredding processes in the past, but there's a lot of commingled product, and with manual disassembly you get cleaner byproducts, and cleaner byproducts have a lot more value, and we're talking items like plastics and steel, whatever it may be. And you have focused material removal. With manual disassembly, it's easier to separate your focused materials like your mercury-based product or your circuit boards, etc. The stuff that we have to keep an eye on and process in the most expedient way, and yet meeting all the regulations, it's a lot easier to take them apart manually than it is to try to do it after you send it through a shredder. The concerns with manual disassembly: security of sensitive or proprietary components. We have a lot of customers that they have computers that may have their names on it and they don't want their names out there, or they may have some sensitive proprietary items in there, not necessarily related to computers, but any type of electronics that comes out there. They don't want any of that stuff getting out the door and getting out on the open market, because their name would be ruined, or there's some other legal issues related to that that would prevent them or get them in a lawsuit, as well as yourself. So there's a lot of that. The other sensitive issues there is your hard drives. We talked about shredding hard drives. We talked about the wiping process, the DOD process. A lot of people want all of their stuff destroyed, regardless. We've had products come in the door that aren't even a year old, but they decided they needed to upgrade, and we'll have brand new units, literally brand new units in there that have to be destroyed. So that is some of the concerns with your customers, your end users. What is it that they're looking for? And then labor costs. Although you're creating jobs and you may get credits for that, labor cost is a key factor, because to do any size of volume through that facility, you're going to need headcount. You're going to need people that can do wipes. You're going to need people that can do the manual disassembly. You're going to need people to process the separate commodities. So there's a lot of concerns with manual disassembly. And then we'll talk about mechanical shredding and sorting. There's a shredder for every material type. You can get anything from a shredder that's going to be twice the size of this room that can do whole computers or printers. We have one of those types of shredders. Or you can get small-scale hard drives, cell phone size reduction. You can get them about the size of this desk right here. But it's all dependent upon what you want to do. What is your focus when you want to get into the business? Are you looking for high volume? Are you looking for getting into the cell phone, the tablet industry? It depends on what you want to do, but there is a shredder for every need, and I'm sure we'll all see various types of shredders at this show in the next couple days. So it just depends. You need to decide what you want to do. Prior to purchasing a shredder, you have to consider your input materials. You plan your plans for handling the output material. Again, it's infinitely customizable. It just depends on what you want to do. We have, at my facility, we have several facilities with shredders in it, but in my facility we've got small shredders that will handle hard drives, and will handle tablets. I don't shred tablets unless I have to. But there's things that you can do with small shredder, and then we have the large shredder that will handle, ours handles a 30 by 30 inch diameter product that will go through and it'll shred it up. So it depends on what you're looking for, what kind of stuff you're looking at. This is a picture of our large shredder that we have at the facility, and you can see how We have a pit down at the bottom on the lower left-hand side there. It's the pit where we load the product in there. Goes up, goes through the shredder, and then we have a sorting process, and we'll talk about this as we go through. We have a sorting process on the end, and even beyond here, which you can't see, there's another process, and we'll talk about some of those sorting processes as we go forward. So mechanical shredding and sorting, we're still talking about this, the benefits of shredding and sorting. There's a higher volume throughput. You need to have a lot of volume to utilize a big shredder like the one we have. But you can produce a whole lot more through a shredder than you can by manual disassembly. You're going to be limited by the head count, again, going into the cost of what it would take to do something manually. But shredder, you can shred 40, 50,000 pounds in an 8-hour shift easily, or I should say 400 to 500,000 pounds easily. So you have a lot of volume that you can put through it. The process is cumbersome for some items. So what we look at, some of the items that are cumbersome could be, we'll say tablets as an example, right? Some of the things that you want to take apart, we make things nowadays that are more compact and more sleek looking, so they're, in that process, they're making things harder to take apart. At one point in time, you could take a desktop apart with just 4 screws and the whole thing will just start popping out. It's not as easy as that anymore because we're just making things more and more compact. Our tablets would be an example. Our cell phones are examples of that. The other benefit of shredding is data security and brand management. Again, I touched on this, but basically with data security, we have companies that want their hard drive shredded, no matter what, no resale, even if you can wipe it, prove to them that it's 100% clean. They just want it destroyed. And then the brand management. We have several customers that just absolutely insist that all their equipment is shredded. They don't care about resale. They don't care about the value that could be returned to them. They just want the product destroyed. So that's an advantage there. It's one way to sell to your customer. And let's be honest, shredding e-waste looks cool. I don't know how many customers have come. I don't know how many customers have come through the plant and they're just in awe by looking at the shredder and the product that comes out of it. To think that you can take a big desktop, put it in that shredder, and just a matter of a few seconds later, you've got thousands and thousands of tiny little parts. And Jim, with probably one of the guys right there, he was impressed when he came through the plant. It's like, that's just amazing. And it's cool. It is. It's really cool to see that. And maybe it's a guy thing, I don't know. You know, we just like to see things be destroyed. So anyway, so it is cool. It's cool to see stuff being shredded. We have some concerns with mechanical shredding though. It's not all glory, even though it looks cool. Because focus materials like your batteries, your mercury devices, which are your CRTs, and your inks and toners have to be removed manually regardless, even if you're going to shred it. Part of that reason is, one, it's a focus material, and two, when you're processing batteries, they could ignite, they could explode, a little explosion in there. And if you have inks and toners in there, the dust that's created from that will easily explode and catch fire. So you have that potential danger there when you're doing shredding. You always need to remember to remove your inks, toners, and your batteries. And you don't really want to put any mercury devices in there. It's not going to cause any explosions or fires, but it will cause a health and safety issue for your employees that are in the area. So you need to make sure those kind of things are taken care of. Capital investment, the cost and the need to utilize the capacity of the shredder. Shredders aren't cheap. Depends on the size that you want. They can range from $20,000 up to $1 million. Just depends on what you're looking for. And so the cost of that is really, really the driver of what you want to do. You have to decide what is it you want to do in the business. How big do you want to jump in? Do you want to jump in and just do remarketing? Do you want to jump in and just do some small volume versus manual disassembly? Or do you want to actually get into the shredding business, okay? But if you do that, then you need to understand it takes a lot of volume to keep that thing busy to pay for your investment. And I use this movie quote, you know, build it and they will come, right? Well, it's not that way with a shredder. You've got to have some planned volume coming in the door, or at least have some commitments of some planned volume coming in the door to keep that shredder running, to keep that thing paying for itself, because it's not going to be cheap, okay? So there is a lot of planning that needs to go into that. The most important factor with the shredding is how the output material will be handled. Is it going to be commingled? You're just going to shred it and then try to sell it as is? Or do you want to actually sort it and separate it, which is the most cost-effective way to do it? So you need to understand what you want to do with that product. There's a lot of different ways, which we'll talk about in the next slide, on how to do the sortation. But sorters are designed to handle both the coarse and fine materials. It just depends on how small you want it or how large you want those pieces. We have a shredder that'll spit out pieces that are about 10 inches in diameter, and we can process it down to where it's nearly dust. So it's just a matter of what you want to do and what your downstreams are and what the value is that you can get for that product. So you just need to understand what those are. And some of the sorting methods that are out there, you can do the manual sort. We talked about that. In a manual sort, you're going to get more value. It's going to take head count. As you saw in that picture, that we had 8 people up on top of that platform separating some of the plastic, some of the copper, some of the steel. Majority of the steel gets picked off by a magnet, which we'll talk about in this next section here. But there's a lot of different processes. You can do a magnetic separation, where you can have a rare earth magnet or an eddy current, which will separate your ferrous, non-ferrous material. Your steel will pull out and go in one location. Your plastics and your other materials will move on to the next step, and your eddy current can separate them even more. There are screens. You can have screens installed on some of your shredders where you can have different size screens to sort out different size materials that you're looking for. And you can have a few of those. I know of a couple of companies that have screen separation in there. And they do a good job, but you do have some issues with screens as well. There's X-ray that will separate some of your materials. There are a few machines out there that have X-ray capability of sorting through some of your materials. And I haven't actually seen one of those, but I've read about them several times, and I'm just really not sure how that works, to be honest with you. To me, it's one of those gray areas that I'll just never understand. Then you have air jets. Air jets can separate your lighter materials. We have an air jet separator, Imager air jet separator, that'll separate the plastics, and it shoots off certain weight of product one direction, which is generally just your plastics at the end of the line. So there are air jets that do that. There is float sink that will, you can use a float sink, which will use liquid of some sort. The plastics can use water, there's different liquids that you could use for separating different types of material. And the density of that material is what dictates what's going to go which direction or the other. So you'll have like a corkscrew process that will float the lighter materials to the top and separate it, and the heavier materials will drop to the bottom. And then you'll have to, again, scoop that up, dry it out in an air jet, and dry that out and process it. And then there's electrostatic separation. So you have all the different items that you can do on sorting. We use a combination of some of these here. So it's just, again, I'll say it again. It depends on what kind of business you want to get into and what you think you're going to do going forward, okay? You don't want to buy a $2 million machine and use it for processing hard drives or tablets. It's just going to kill you, okay? So those are the things. I wanted to go through the slides first and then just kind of open it up for questions. Again, most of the things we did talk about already today. Kind of touched on every one of these things, and I know talking to Gene, he's like, what am I going to talk about at the end here? But it all ties together. So do you have any questions on anything? Yes?
Does your company have more than multiple shredders? Was that just one
Yes, we have 4 shredders like that at 4 different locations throughout North America. And then we have some smaller shredders. This is our stage 1. The one that I showed is the stage 1 of our shredding operations. We also have another shredder that goes after that that processes it down to even further into smaller particles. Like I said, we can go down to a dust. So we have that process as well. And that just pulls out your red metals, et cetera, so that you can get even more value. It's, again, more sortation, more separation, just to gain the product value.
Prior to going into the shredder, how much labor is involved, manual?
The only manual labor that we put into anything going into our shredder, other than receiving it, it would be removing the ink and toner, ensuring that all the ink and toners are removed, and naturally any glass, any CRTs we don't process through there, or LCDs. So that's the only thing. We don't put any CRTs or LCDs in our shredder, but what we do is after we do the D-man, the manual D-man on those, we can, in certain cases like CRT housings, or not the housings, yeah, the assemblies rather, we can put those through there because there's no contaminants in there. But to get to that, you have to take the whole CRT apart, which is a pretty quick process. So.
Is there any risk in terms of batteries that you'll find on circuit boards and so on and so forth that you have to remove first? And you guys just kind of toss everything all in there commingled, or you have to separate out different stuff?
No, we don't put circuit boards in with our regular e-waste, if you want to call it that, the low-grade or high-grade waste going into the machine. We generally will take any circuit boards apart. Like I said at the beginning here, the most common items that you will do manual disassembly on are desktops and and laptops, because you want to get the board out of there, and then you have a battery on your motherboards that you need to take out. The other value of doing it that way is on your circuit boards. There's a variety of circuit board value out there, from 90 cents a pound up to $24 a pound.
And what about stuff like remote controls and stuff that have an alkaline battery? Just throw that
All batteries are removed. We verify all batteries are removed. When you get a lot of, generally for remote controls as an example, whenever we're processing remote controls, we'll generally see a whole load, a gaylord full of those at a time. When we're working with consumers, naturally we'll see a lot of remote controls coming through the process. But at the bottom of that pit there, right before it goes in the shredder, down in the lower left-hand corner, we have a person down there. When we dump the material on the ground right there, and we have a bobcat they'll push it in there. We have a guy down there that looks at that, and he'll pull out, a remote control or whatever for the odds and ends that we see going through there, and he'll verify that the batteries are removed on there. Again, it's the manual process that's involved there. So really, the manual process, we ensure all batteries are removed, all ink and toners are removed.
What about stuff where, like a set-top box, for example, like a cable box?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that there are batteries in the board there, but are you guys going to manually dismantle that?
Not all the set-top boxes have batteries. Many of them do. The ones that we do know that have batteries in there, we'll see it, and we do segregate those. Not all set-top boxes are thrown in the shredder. Some of them have some pretty decent, the older ones anyway, have some good circuit boards in there that are have a lot more value than if you were to send it in there, shred it up, and have it commingled, because you're always going to have a little bit of circuit board that you're going to have to really sort through pretty intensely. So not all set-top boxes are shredded. There are some that are. Those that are don't have the batteries in them. It's just a matter of knowing your product as it's coming in, really. You have to know what you're dealing with and what you're going to do with it. You have to know the hazards before you put anything in there.
What are you doing with your batteries and your CRTs?
The CRTs, the glass tubes. Glass tubes, we have our downstream where they go to a facility that actually grinds up the glass and separates the lead out of the glass, and then they sell the lead back to the refinery, and the glass is cleaned and processed after that.
Just want to add, too, that tomorrow there's going to be a whole course on problem materials. things like batteries and CRT glass. So keep that in mind and look at the schedule for tomorrow's course on that specific issue.
Tomorrow morning, right?
I believe it is in the morning, I'm not sure of the time.
Yes?
After the boards are stripped down, are the balance of the board shipped out to copper content?
Well, what we do, there's various ways that people process circuit boards, but basically what we do is we have a hammer mill shredder that we send our circuit boards through, and it shreds them up into finer particles, dime-sized particles, something like that. And we'll send that off to a smelter, and they'll collect all the precious metals out of there and pay us based on the content that was in there. But we do process those circuit boards separately. There are companies that have a chemical processing that they'll take the boards, put them in there, and chemically remove some of the precious metals. But we send ours to a smelter.
What's the average copper content?
It's a good question. I don't have that number off the top of my head, to be honest with you. But there's copper is probably the least valuable part of the circuit board. It's really the gold and the silver that you get.
But there are some boards
There-
that have very little.
Nowadays, there's a lot of boards that have very little of that. That's been the big change in the industry. As we get more and more high tech, they're learning how to use less and less of the precious metals in a circuit board. And we even have some that are, I wouldn't say worthless, but are not worth a whole lot more money. Boards that we at one time might have called a high-grade circuit board are probably a low or at best a medium-grade circuit board nowadays.
You mentioned manually disassembling. What's the reason to shred up circuit boards after if you've already got them, what's the reason to?
Well, with us, we have our processor, our smelter that we use. They'll charge us a fee for grinding them up because they have to be ground up regardless. So rather than paying the fee at that end, it's cheaper for us to do it on our end and send it in the state that they want it. So that's why we do that.
Do you find that the plastic that's coming out of the shredder, is there always markets for that?
Oh, yes, yeah. Now, right now, I think a lot of people know that plastics are not moving as quickly as they have been recently. But yeah, we have that. And we bale that plastic up as well. We like to try to keep the plastic, no larger, or no smaller rather than, say, 2-inch, 3-inch diameter. But it does get down into smaller particles as well. You can't help it by the type of shredder that you have. And there are knife shredders, there's chain shredders, there are all different types of shredders. But yeah, we sell, all of our plastic we'll sell back to the manufacturer, plastics manufacturer. So.
John, on the total amount of e-waste that's coming into an average processing facility, what would be the ratio of guaranteed destruction to stuff that's not guaranteed destruction?
Value-wise?
No, the amount that you process 100 tons a day, what would be average?
We're at 98.5% of product that we use and resell after that. And so we always have a little bit that everybody will have a little bit.
Like guaranteed destruction, like stuff that you're not allowed to strip and see.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Guaranteed destruction.
All right, we probably have,
Something that you may strip and sell components of the game through one string, but if it's coming through.
it's very minimal. It's very minimal. We just have a couple of customers that want everything destroyed. So I would say maybe 5%. Yeah, it's not a lot. In my opinion, it's not a lot. But there's some of our customers just want their stuff destroyed. So, and there's money in that, right? I mean, we can't resell components of any of that stuff, but there's just a few of those that really require that. I don't think it's a large portion in the industry as a whole that require that. But.
Is that, so do you see that area of the industry shrinking, growing?
I don't see it shrinking, but I don't see it growing. I think it's going to be pretty stagnant where it is right now.
So do you charge for the destruction? Guaranteed destruction?
Guaranteed destruction. At one time, we used to charge for that, but because of the market, as we all know in here, our customers are becoming smarter and smarter. Like a comment over here was made earlier this morning, you know, our customers are pushing us. You know, they want money. They want money. It's not just, can you destroy this for me? At one time we used to charge. Now everybody is getting smarter. They know that there's value in all that stuff. So what you have to do is present to them, here's what I can give you in some cases. CRTs, LCDs, different story. But it's like, here is my cost, here's what I can do based on the marketplace, right? So, yeah, almost everybody's looking for something nowadays. But we do have customers that all they want is destroyed, and we don't charge them, but we get to keep the revenues off the shred in that case. Yes?
Going back to sorting methods, what's the difference between X-ray and optical separation?
Well, optical is really a form of X-ray, right? But the optical separation, like on our shredder, we have actual cameras in there that see the plastic coming through, the grades of plastic that are flowing through, and that's when our air jets come into effect, and it shoots it one direction or the other. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, John. That was an excellent description of the whole processing side of our industry and how detailed and complex that can be. Just a quick comment, though. After hearing Paul's presentation and now John's, you can tell that there's a lot involved in this, in each side of this. So it may sound overwhelming if people are just getting started, but also think that these guys are opportunities for you to work with them, too. They could be let's say a downstream outlet, if you want to have things done the right way and you feel that these guys are they're good at what they do, and they are, then that's an opportunity. So let's see, a couple of housekeeping things while I have a minute. There is a sign-up sheet in the back, and it went around earlier. If you signed up, great. If you haven't, please do that in the back of the room. We also have evaluation forms that hopefully everybody has. If you don't, we have more of those, and please fill those out. That helps us, helps our committee do more of these courses and fine-tune and get you what you're looking for from an education standpoint. So please do that and give us your honest feedback. The next course this afternoon is on certification, and I would highly suggest that if you want to know more about attaining a higher level with your business, that this afternoon's course would be an excellent one to attend. Also, over the next couple of days, there'll be more opportunities in the electronics track. So we have 2 more tomorrow, and then we have 3 on Friday. So keep an eye out on your schedule, and hopefully you can attend more of these sessions. Okay, let's get moving on to our next speaker. Next we have Tracy Blazak. Tracy has worked in the electronics industry for over 4 years, beginning in the IT asset disposition portion. Currently, she is the EH&S Compliance Director for Synergy Recycling, a full-service electronics recycler that provides data destruction and shredding of electronics. Previously, she worked in the hazardous waste industry. Tracy holds a BS in chemical engineering and a 6 Sigma black belt. Let's welcome Tracy Blazak.
Sorry, a little technical difficulty here. Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about responsible recycling and some of the certifications within the industry and what you need to do and look at in your processes to really take it to that level. So we'll go through first, and we're going to define what responsible recycling is. What is it? What are your clients going to look for, or your upstream providers that you may have? What are the benefits of becoming certified and being that responsible recycler? I think everybody has the marketing materials from ISRI for Rios and R2 as a certified electronics recycler, and you can look at that information. That's going to include a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. And then lastly, we'll go through what it takes to build that management system to get certified and what are the key aspects that you need to make sure you put in place. So first of all, what is responsible recycling? Responsible recycling is taking those devices, going ahead, tearing them down, shredding them down. Maybe you're doing some data clear and resale and getting it back on the market. It's really promoting that reuse recovery hierarchy that we use. And in addition, it's going to create different opportunities for you within your organization, such as increased communication, continuous improvement, environmental health and safety compliance, quality management, and making sure you're getting those pure products out of your streams. So why should you choose responsible recycling? Because you can be the industry leader. When you look at a lot of the organizations out there today, and most of us that are sitting up here, we all hold certifications because it's a reassurance to our client that we're doing the right thing and we're going above and beyond where we need to be. It says that we take those environmental health and safety responsibilities seriously, and that we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure that our employees are not going to get hurt, and we're not going to go ahead and put things in a landfill and pollute the environment. And we're really going to push that environmental sustainability. It also holds a system of accountability to final disposition. Make sure those materials are being managed properly. And we'll talk about focused materials, and I'm sure you guys have heard within the industry some of the things going on with markets. And at tomorrow's session, they'll be able to get into that a little bit more detail for you. As you heard earlier as well, data security is the top priority, whether that's securing your facility or going ahead and making sure you're using DoD standards to data wipe materials. So the overall benefits of certification, it's going to set your foundation principles and structure for processing. So no longer are you coming in and you have 10 employees and they all operate differently. Here you're going to have policies, procedures, and all your employees are going to be consistent in what they do and how they do things. It also identifies the core elements of your business and your management style. If you're a fly-by-night organization just doing things to make money, that's going to go back to the way that the clients look at you from a processing and data security standpoint. And by being organized and having that system in place, you really can stand out from the others. Also talking about the protection, again, environmental health and safety, and making sure you have that environmental sustainability. Most organizations within the industry that are doing responsible recycling have some type of zero landfill policy and really push to promote that. Quality excellence and improvement in operational efficiency. One of the things with certification you'll hear us talk about is continuous improvement. It really makes sure that you go ahead and you continue to get your processes better, and in those cases, improve what you do, how you do it, and keep that effort going. And then last, data destruction practices. We talked about that. And also, sometimes certification is a requirement now. When you look at a lot of the state take-back programs and the state regulations, they are actually requiring, as a recycler, that you are certified to one of the standards. When it comes to environmental sustainability, it's going to focus on the reuse of devices and materials. So first and foremost, before you're shredding, before you're destroying, you're going to be able to go ahead, data clear, remarket, resell, put those materials out there to another country where they're considered new, and you can really get value out of the product that way. The other way you can get value out of the product is through recycling. So when you're tearing down equipment, when you're shredding, when you're able to separate those commodities and those streams, those materials are going to be processed back into new products, whether it's going right back direct into an electronic that you may purchase, or if it's going into something else in the marketplace. And again, that landfill avoidance, right? We always talk that zero landfill is the direction we want to see the industry going. So you're going to reuse, recover, and recycle those materials. It also creates a safety culture. And there's so many things that really go into creating that safety culture, like commitment, involvement, reporting, responsibility, training. All these things not only do you need to do as far as a certification standpoint, but you need to do as far as a regulatory standpoint and for the prevention of health and safety incidents. In turn, that should increase your morale, right? Your employees know that you care, they're glad that you care, they want to do better for the organization, which is in turn going to help your regulatory compliance, preventing incidents, and you doing continuous improvement. And having that goal of 0 incidents and 0 accidents. For quality and consistency in your processes, certification is going to force you to take a deeper look at those elementary processes, the basic things you do. What are you doing it? How are you doing it? How can you get better? It's going to allow you to do trend analysis to determine your efficiencies or inefficiencies in some case. It removes those decision points so that from a day-to-day basis, you're not changing things. You've got processes, procedures, and there's an organizational structure to make those changes. Also, identification of function unit definitions, right? So it's going to force you to identify your commodities, your materials, the things you're processing, whether they're incoming client materials and you call it a CPU to a laptop, maybe it's a complete unit, an incomplete unit, but it's also going to force you to look at the downstream material that you're going to ship, whether it's steel or aluminum, or maybe it's aluminum mixed with copper. It could be any of those scrap streams. It's going to focus on the quality product, right? So you're going to actually make sure you're preventing contamination in your process. So where you are shredding and you do have those separation technologies like John talked about, that they have at GEEP, is really going to force you to purify those streams and pull out any contamination so that when you send it to their end processor or that remanufacturer, they're getting that quality product that you desire to process. So let's talk about getting certified and what are the steps to do that. So to get certified to R2 and RIOS, the first thing that you want to do is become a member company and obtain copies of those standards. So if you are an ISRI member, your fee to join RIOS is much cheaper than if you're not an ISRI member. And there are a lot of benefits I'll talk to you about in a minute of being an ISRI member and joining RIOS and where that puts you within the industry. Next, you're going to go ahead and design and implement your management system and operate that system. Make sure that your employees are doing what they need to be doing, you're going through your training, you're setting up your procedures, your processes, and you're making sure that you're following everything by auditing that process. Select your certification body. I know that there are several here this week that you can talk to and discuss your audits with. And then you go ahead and you schedule your stage 1, stage 2, and become certified. So a basic RIOS management system requires that you monitor and improve your product quality, increasing customer satisfaction and confidence. It also requires that you keep on top of environmental compliance. So how many people in the room do we have that are certified to RIOS? Okay. Anybody certified to R2 RIOS, both standards? So we've got a few. And so if you're not aware, RIOS is that standard that combines ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and OSAS 18001. So your quality, environmental health, and safety into one standard for the scrap recycling industry. And so what that does is instead of getting certified to 3 standards, you can do it as 1. And you'll see with your marketing materials now, if you're certified to RIOS and R2, you are now a branded certified electronics recycler. And I'll talk about later how many sites are certified and what it can do to give you that competitive edge. So also with RIOS, again, all these standards and certifications really force you to do continuous improvement in your processes. Doesn't matter whether it's quality, safety, environmental, it just wants you to get better year to year. And it empowers your employees. Certification requires communication, and so if your employees are communicating and everyone is open and participating, you have an opportunity to really build upon your process and get better. So with a RIOS membership, you get a copy of the RIOS standard, a licensed copy with your name on it, and you get access to the RIOS community. So that's other people who are certified, other ISRI members that are going through certification, and a network of people that are there to support each other through the process. You also get the implementation guide and the internal auditor training materials. So for those of us who have been to a RIOS class, know it's a huge binder. But it is all templates and ways to set up your process, right? Your management system, your environmental health and safety policies, your basic quality policies, procedures, and really start you to get certified. So that small fee that you pay to become a RIOS member really has its advantages from that standpoint. You also get the eligibility to sit in these workshops. ISRI promotes a couple of workshops each year for RIOS, and so they'll go through with you how to build that management system. And they usually have an industry participant as well that will tell you about their experience and their techniques. And then lastly, you can get an appointment to the RIOS committee or even serve on the board of the directors. So R2, responsible recycling. Who knows? Who has R2? Does everyone know what R2 is? Okay, so R2 is focusing on responsible recycling. And it's making sure that those environmental health and safety aspects of electronics recycling, that you're fully implementing a formal system and you're putting those policies and procedures in place. It also requires you to manage that more toxic material, and you've heard everyone talk about focused materials, you know, CRTs, batteries, mercury-containing devices. It prohibits you from exporting these to countries that have enacted laws that prohibit you from doing it, right? So it requires you to follow those export regulations. And it also focuses on performance of your operations, dealing with refurbishment and reuse, site security, data security, and the whole recycling process and chain of custody through final disposition. So to set up your management system, the first thing you're going to start with is the plan, do, check, act process, right? So what this requires is step one, you're going to put it together. You're going to plan. What documents do you need? What procedures do you need to develop? Work instructions? Are there any forms or anything you need to do? Let's plan it out and get ready. You're also going to go through and do your legal evaluation, do your training with employees, and put all those things in place. The next thing is you're going to do, right? So when it comes to quality, environmental health, and safety, you're going to make sure those procedures are being followed, do what you say you're doing, and then go back and check that. You do your internal audits, your management reviews, and those things so that you can check your processes, your procedures, and then you can act upon it to get better and focus on doing that continual improvement. So for your quality system management requirements, basic things like process control, services management, looking at your suppliers, your contractors, clients, customers, anybody coming on site, providing materials for you, providing services, even your clients that are bringing the electronics for you to process. It also requires control of non-conforming materials. For those of us that have been in the business, we always get things in that we're not supposed to get, right? That random employee at your client's facility just stuck some stuff in that box and it came to you. So you have to set up those ways to handle that material and what do you do with it and how do you work through it with the clients. Document control and record retention and corrective and preventative action. Right, so when something does go wrong, let's look at it. Let's figure out what really happened, and let's figure out how to get better from it. And in turn, those are going to be the key aspects of your system, right? Continuous improvement. You're going to get customer satisfaction and client assurance. And also, you're going to measure your metrics. What are your things that you're going to look at? Are you going to look at ROI? Are you going to look at returns from clients? Are you going to look at number of incidents that you have. So all those metrics that you measure focus you to continue to do that. So the key requirements of an environmental health and safety management system are, number one, putting your policy statement out there and communicating it effectively to your employees. Whether that is going through and just reading it to them or going ahead and posting it up on bulletin boards, or some companies even print out little cards and badges that they give them. Putting your emergency response plan in place. What do you do in the case of a fire or a tornado or a spill? And what happens when you do have incidents, whether it's an injury or a spill or a vehicle accident? How do you handle that? What really happened? What caused it? And how are you going to prevent it in the future? Putting those basic PPE programs, right? Or regulatory programs in place and training upon it. Confined space, respiratory protection, PPE, hazard communication, all those basic OSHA and EPA requirements that you've got to have. It also requires you to look at legal and other requirements, right? So not only do you want to put those basic compliance, regulatory related items in place, but you also want to go above and beyond and expand to other realms. Look at your state, your local, your county regulations. Look at export and import compliance. What can you send out? What can't you send out? What do you need to do in regards to that? Again, OSHA, EPA, DOT, hazardous materials, right? When we're transporting batteries within the US, a lot of them are hazardous materials. So how do we handle that from a regulatory standpoint? Also looking at your client and your customer requirements. So, right, so your incoming clients may require you to do data destruction, and your downstreams may require a certain type of scrap commodity that you send them. Oops, I missed. And the last one, sorry guys, that we talked about is continuous improvement already, right? So how do you get better from your process? And some of the things that you can focus on and look at and do are having safety meetings and having open communication and involvement from your employees. Looking at your hazards and your aspects and impacts. So what are your potentials, in regards to your different processes or procedures, and what are you going to put in place to prevent any incidents or reduce the potential? As well as having objectives and targets. What are your goals for the year? Do you want 0 incidents? Do you want a rate reduction of 15%? Whatever it might be. Maybe you want to focus on 0 landfill and try and promote that in your process. So responsible recycling, again, focuses on that hierarchy that we talked about before, which number 1 is reuse. Getting those devices, data wiping them, making sure you protect your client data, whether you're complying with DOD, NAST 800-88, or whether you're looking at HIPAA regulations. Making sure that that material is safe, it's secure, whether it's a hard drive, a jump drive, a cell phone, whatever. And making sure that it can't get out of your site with that data on it. So going ahead, making sure that site security again and that data wiping happens. Functionality testing that equipment, right? So under R2 and responsible recycling, it makes you look at your process. So does that equipment work? If it doesn't work, maybe we can send it off for some repairs or refurbishment, or we can still make that unit worth reselling. Next is recover. The material separation and recovery. We talk about shredding and destruction and how we can separate those commodities and those streams to send off for recycling. Dismantling it, and maybe we're using, again, mechanical processing in some ways. And then going ahead and recycling components and parts. Some of us may pull things off to repair other units, right? Whether it's some RAM or memory, or maybe it's replacing a bulb or a screen. And then the last is actually recycling. Pulling out those value streams, right? Your copper wire, your circuit boards, whatever it might be. Avoiding the landfill and really focusing on getting those materials to be reused in new products. You also need to look at your regulatory references. So here is just a general list of federal programs that you can look at when you're starting. What do you need to comply with? And if you look, there are 25 states, I believe now, that have state electronics take-back regulations. So you can reference various websites that are out there, and they'll take you to the state regs, and you can look and see what you need to do. So focus materials. You've heard this probably most of the morning already. When you're looking at your process and you're bringing in electronics, you're going to go through some kind of disassembly or sorting, possibly manually, or it could be through some kind of mechanical process. And you want to pull out those focus materials to make sure you're managing them properly. Things like your batteries, your mercury devices that would go for mercury retort, your circuit boards that are going to go for metals recovery, CRTs that have leaded gas, and then finally PCBs. And everything else that you've got there, can go to shred. except for toner and ink. When you're looking at the new R2 standard that's coming out this year, you will see that we do manage toner and ink almost like a focus material, even though they're not classified as such. So when you're managing these materials, you have to have a written plan. Where are they in your process? What are you going to do with them? Where are they going to go? You know, there are some exceptions, so FMs must be removed using safe and effective mechanical processing or manual dismantling. There are some exceptions to that for mercury if it's too small, if you protect your workers. CRTs, batteries, and circuit boards need not be removed prior to shredding or materials recovery if you can meet the regulatory requirements and the technology that you have can safely manage that. So if you are shredding and you want to throw a circuit board in with a battery, you just have to make sure you don't have a fire. So whatever you can do to do that. It also prohibits energy recovery, incineration, landfill disposal, things you want to look at in your process and really discourage that from happening. And again, toner and ink have to be removed and recycled. It also requires downstream due diligence. Going to your next tier levels all the way through to final disposition, looking at their focused material management plan. Do they have an environmental health and safety management system? Are they certified to anything? Compliance. Are they exporting? And have they looked at the regulations to make sure they can really do that? Do they do downstream audits and tracking? Are they conforming? If they're doing any data destruction or repair refurbishment or functionality testing for you, do they comply with the requirements and your client's requirements? And looking at their security controls and evidence that they promote that hierarchy in the process. R2 2013, which will be coming out here in the next couple months, we hope, requires that you have to do this downstream due diligence annually. Whether it's through doing an audit or some other type of means that will comply with these requirements. Tracking throughput. So responsible recycling requires that you maintain copies of all commercial contracts, bill of lading, any other accepted documentation, so that you know where those focus materials are going down through the final processing tier. And transportation requires that you verify your transporters, comply with all legal requirements, and that they have a good background as far as staying in compliance and doing the right thing, right? You don't want to be using transporters that have regular accidents and incidents, because then how do you know that your material is being protected? So data destruction, we've talked about that responsible recycling requires that you self-sanitize, purge, or destroy data on the hard drives or other storage devices compliant with NIST 800-88. And as you've heard today, most people within the industry go above that, and they're using DoD standards. So it also requires that you document that. You make sure that internally and externally you have some kind of data destruction verification. Also, it focuses on reuse, right? Are we going to repair, refurbish, test that equipment to make sure that we can go ahead and get it out? It wants you to look at your client requirements. Do they allow you to sell the whole unit? Do they allow you to sell components of the unit? Or are there specific components you can sell? And make sure that you're following those processes to go ahead and destine them for reuse. Under the new R2 standard, there's 3 categories for identifying and labeling your material, and you can see them here. I'm not going to go through them with you this morning. You'll get to read about them in the standard, and then this afternoon, Corey Demi is actually going to get into more detail on what the 3 are, where to classify different things. Facility security, right? Your facility security should be comparable to the equipment that you're handling. If you're handling, government materials, you obviously want to have higher end security. And if you're just bringing in material that's going to be destroyed and it doesn't really have any data that's pertinent, then maybe you don't need to go above and beyond. But you really need to look at who your client base is, who you're servicing, who you want to service in the industry, and decide what controls you want to put in place. whether that's swipe badges with controlled access or fenced yards or visitor surveillance, or, I'm sorry, video surveillance, whatever it might be that's going to make sure and give your clients the reassurance that they need. You have to have insurance, enclosure plan, and financial responsibility. Responsible recycling requires you to put insurance in place to handle your general liability and pollution liability. And that reassures your clients that if something does happen, you have the proper measures in place. You know, and finally, doing your closure plan. Putting what it's going to cost, putting those numbers right there of if you walk away from the facility, who's going to clean it up? And putting that financial assurance in place related to that closure plan so that that funding is there and controlled by a third party to make sure that you can't just walk away and leave it. So again, going back to certification and why we want to be certified is because we want to be the industry leader. We all want to stand out. We want to be above and beyond and be that certified electronics recycler. As of March 1st, 2013, there was 352 sites with R2 certification, 81 with RIOS, and of those 81, 73 of them are certified electronics recyclers. And this is not companies, this is facilities, so by address. Certification is going to give you that client confidence and reassurance, right? Put in place your management system, ensure the data removal and destruction, and track your focus of materials to final disposition. Make sure that you're not creating that generator, cradle to grave responsibility when it comes to those hazardous materials. Questions?
You talked about reuse, and there are some companies like ours, for example, primarily recycling. When the material comes to our door, it's already been judged by the client, and the client wants it destroyed. So would you be offsite, or are there having some exceptions built into the market platform for companies that just don't reuse?
So obviously, within the industry and within R2, we always want to promote reuse. But there are a lot of companies that do just recycle. You know, that's primarily what my company does. So we have partnerships that will do that data destruction and resale on the front end, and we just focus on the recycling. So there is a way to build it into your system, and you can look at other ways to reuse things, right?
I know, and we do that, and I just want to make sure that it's not something that's a roadblock to getting things.
No, it's not at all.
Part of the certification, do you have, I mean, we account for every pound that comes into our facility, whether it's ferrous or non-ferrous, but on the outgoing side, with the certification, do you have to account for every pound that little tidbits of waste or you know, ironing aluminum or so forth, so that will all be documented?
So the Responsible Recycling Standard R2 requires that you go ahead and you track throughput or have some kind of process to do that for focus materials. Okay, so, but a lot of OEMs and clients out there may require you to go above and beyond, and that's what you need to look at. Who are you going to service? What are your requirements now?
So, I know that this is relatively new, but the downstream due diligence, is ISRI going to create, or is it part of the SRIA package?
No. So one thing that, you know, I think we all need to realize is ISRI does have SRIA reports available, right, to reduce your liability, and they can be ordered, I think, till April 30th. But the SRIA reports aren't enough. If you just pull a SRIA report, you still have to document your due diligence and justify it under SRIA so you don't have the liability. So even though you're getting a SRIA report, you should at least be doing some additional downstream due diligence. Whether you're getting R2 and RIO certified or you're just a scrap recycler that pulls those reports. But the SRIA reports are available in addition to your audit.
Forgive me in the venue if this is an inappropriate question, but I'm trying to understand RIOs versus e-stewards. Is
Sure. So what you mostly see out there are RIOS, which is an ISRI branded environmental health and safety and quality standard that incorporates the 3 other standards you will see, but it focuses for specifically the scrap recycling industry. And so that is going to be ISO 14001, which is your environmental standard, OSAS 18001 is your safety, and ISO 9001 is your quality. And then ISRI has branded R2, which is the responsible recycling standard, with RIOS to be a certified electronics recycler. Okay, thank you.
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Tracy. One of the things that I was thinking about as she's presenting today is that our company went through this 2 years ago. It's very time consuming. It took us, I think, about 1.5 years to go through the process. You're going to spend some resources, both with people and with dollars. So, but I will tell you the one thing is I look at it as an investment. And basically it allows you to obtain some of these contracts that you're after. It gives you confidence in your abilities within your company. But I think probably the most important thing is that you're going to make your company better. You're going to, from this whole process and looking at all these different elements that you do within your business, and now you have something that you can rely on. It's going to make your business better, more efficient. It's going to be, you're going to get a return on your investment through the certification. So let's see. Again, just as a reminder, please fill out those questionnaire forms once we're done here, and they'll be at the back table. We can collect them there. And let's see. The handouts, as I mentioned earlier, we ran out of the books. If anybody came in late, you'd be available to get all the presentations on the ISRI website. Not sure the timing, but it will be available eventually. So now, let's see. We're going to get into our last speaker, which is George Hinkle. George is going to help us with some real basics on what to take away from the course today and how to get started and some action items that you might be able to do. So George is the president of ARCOA and has been involved in the asset remarketing and electronics recycling industry for 13 years. ARCOA is an end-of-life electronics recycler and is part of the ARCOA Group. The group operates facilities in Illinois, Maryland, Florida, California, and Santiago, Chile. They provide services to customers that include demanufacturing, materials reclamation, asset management, and data destruction. ARCOA is an R2 and ISO 14001 certified company. Welcome to George Hinkle.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm going to count to 3. When I do, if you could all wave, because I'm from Chicago and it's 39 and raining, and they swear to God I'm not inside actually working, so I'm going to prove to them I'm actually doing something. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, wave. All right, the front row did it. I got it. Thanks. We got set up. So I feel a little intimidated being up here. Everyone that spoke already is very professional, polished, educated, and now you got the redneck from Florida. So we're going to dummy down the presentation quite a bit here and speak on the basics of just how to make some money doing this. How many of you already do electronics recycling? All right. So the majority of you are assuming scrap metal, right? So we'll try and talk on a level that you can understand and make some sense of it. I'll give you a little bit of history of ARCOA so you know where we're coming from. A lot of what was in my slide presentation has already been covered, so I'll try and incorporate it into how it has affected us and how we grew. ARCOA actually started up 2009 in my garage, actually, is where it actually got started from. One of my partners had a remarketing facility. He had scrap copiers that he couldn't remarket. They were going to a scrapyard, getting shredded, and EJ came up with the idea that, well, we could take them apart and make more money doing it ourselves, recycling ourselves. So we shipped a bunch of copiers in my garage, and that's how we started. Screwdriver, pair of pliers, wire snips, and started doing disassembly there. That was 2009. horrible year to actually try and get into the recycling business. I don't know if you guys recall what happened in 2008, but it was ugly. Trying to sell scrap metal in 2009 was brutal. 2010 it started coming around. 2011 I met my other partner that we now have, Terry, who has about 20 years of experience in the scrap metal business, which was a huge boost to us. And then we went through the R2 process, got certified to that, the ISO 14000. So from 2009, where we did almost nothing, maybe $15,000, $20,000 in revenue, to last year we finished up at just a little over $8 million in revenue. So, and that basically happened in a 3-year period. We're going through a merger right now this year and a small acquisition that we're doing. With that, plus our expected growth, we'll probably finish up 2013 in the 20 to 25 million range. So there's a lot of potential in the industry for growth. You can do a lot of things. And but starting in 2009, we are the babies, like Jim had touched on. And there's a lot of us that are like that. So you can really do some interesting things. Moving along, starting with the R2 recycling. Do you have to be R2 certified to be an electronics recycler? No, there's about 3,000 companies in the United States that do electronics recycling. Some estimated around 2,000. I'm putting it at the higher end at about 3,000. There's only 300 to 400 facilities that are actually certified. So no, you don't have to have it. The question would be, why wouldn't you get it? It's only going to benefit you. Just from an operational standpoint and how your facilities operate, and then to a marketing perspective. A lot of our growth was dependent on the R2 program. We wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't gotten the R2 certification. A lot of our vendors, our customers, they rely on that. That's their number one criteria, is that you have the R2 certification. So it's very beneficial from that standpoint. We saw an RFP came out at the beginning of the year for one of the cell phone companies. They're upgrading their towers right now. Going through the Northeast that they're doing it, we looked at all the material that's coming out of those base stations. Some really nice equipment is coming out. And we estimate for the Northeast, I think we put the value at, was it $5 million? It was $10 million, sorry. About $10 million worth of material. But when you look at that RFP, that's material that used to go to a scrap metal yard. They just take it to any scrap yard for recycling. But that RFP specifically states that it has to go to an R2 or a steward certified facility. You know, so you need to get the R2 if you really want to stay in the business and watch it grow and stuff like that, because more and more manufacturers, the OEMs, and corporations themselves are starting to require it. So, lost my train of thought. But, so definitely worth doing, getting involved in. Identifying the value, where do you make money at it? On the reuse side is always where the higher value is which Jim touched on, Paul touched on also. Anything that you can send to reuse is going to generate a higher revenue for you. Common items that you see on there, you got the computer, servers, network switches, LCD monitors, printers, and copiers. Also what you find in there are components that you're harvesting out of there. That gentleman over here had the question about, you know, is it all recycling and what's actually reuse? Well, when you're harvesting processor chips, memory chips out of these computers, a lot of that can still go to reuse. It's not going to refining and everything. So you still do, there's going to be items that are going to reuse that you really don't think about as a reuse. You know, typically when we look at reuse, we're looking at whole units that are going back out. Same with our power supplies. A lot of our power supplies that we generate out of our facility, out of computers, that's going back into the reuse market. You know, it's not being refined down to the for the copper content. So, where we specialize at our facility is on the scrap side. That's where we know how to make our money. We don't do, our reuse side is about 10% of our volume that comes through the facility. 90% is scrap. That's what we specialize in. So, where you see your value at, you have 3 different categories. You'll have high value, medium value, low value, basically. Your higher value items that you want to target and go after are obviously computers, servers, laptops, cell phones, hard drives, circuit boards, power supplies, AC adapters, UPS systems, and battery backups. This is all driven by the metals content is what drives the value here. So where you're looking at your copper, your precious metals, your aluminum, steel, plastic, this is all what drives it. So everything that, where you see it break down into the chart as far as the different value levels is going to be directly related to what the contents of that equipment is. Moving on to your medium value items, stuff that you may not typically look as a decent value, we'll have it, and that's telephones, keyboards, computer fans, docking stations, printers and copiers. Even on the scrap side, there's still a decent value. For us, we do all manual dismantling. We don't do any shredding at our facility. Everything's dismantled that comes through there. And then on your lower value items, you have consumer electronics, VCR players, radios, vacuum cleaners, etc. For us, at our facility, consumer electronics is a shred item. We don't do it, we don't own a shredder, but we send it to another facility that does. There's just not enough value there to justify the manual disassembly on that. Negative value items, which we touched on periodically, CRT devices, TVs, monitors, you're not going to get away from it. It is a negative item. You're not going to avoid it coming into your facility. It's going to show up whether you like it or not. It's just one of those things you have to be prepared for. Depending on where you're at, what state you're in, if they have the manufacturer take-back programs, you might be able to partner with another recycler that has contracts where they have certain pounds that they have to collect for an OEM. If you can partner with them, that can save you some money on the CRT disposal, or you might be able to break even. You know, so that's something you have to research on where you're at. LCDs, plasma displays, sometimes a negative item. It's heading that direction quickly. Right now, there's still a good reuse market for those. There's a lot of guys out there that are buying them for repair. You can still make money on some of it, but where you get to the damaged screens, cracked screens and stuff like that, and now you're getting into a disposal situation where you're probably going to look at a charge item eventually, you know, because of the systems that they have to go through for the shredding, and then they got to recover the mercury out of it. Batteries also can be a cost item. They can be a revenue item, depends on what it is. The button batteries that are coming off your circuit boards, it's going to cost you money to dispose of that. Whereas a laptop battery or a cell phone battery, it's a nice revenue generator there. So you're looking at a charge of 50, 60 pounds to get rid of a button battery, but you're going to get paid $1, $1.50 a pound for cell phone batteries, laptop batteries. So, and then you have your NiCad, your nickel metal hydride, other things that you can look at. Hidden gems, I like this area. We do well with this just for fun. You look for vintage items that come into your facility that you can resell. Testing equipment, audio visual stuff that wrench heads, geeks, stuff they like to play with. Once you open up and you start recycling electronics, you get all kinds of people coming in your facility that want to go shopping for stuff. You know, they have their tinkerer or whatever, they need a part, a motor, something like that. They'll come in looking for stuff, but you have a great market possibility with eBay. Our monthly revenues in eBay, $15,000, maybe $20,000 a month. It's not significant. I have one of our customers that is a recycler. They do $1 million a month on eBay, and they're only reselling material that comes in for them recycling. So there's a huge possibilities out there. So I never understood eBay until a couple years ago. I'm starting to get a lot better appreciation for it now. Dismantling versus shredding. John talked a lot about shredding. Like I said, we don't shred. I'm not a big fan of shredding. You see a higher value when you do the manual dismantling. As soon as you shred, you're going to lose anywhere from 30 to 40% of the value of that material versus doing manual dismantling. It's not to say that you shouldn't shred. There are customers, like we've seen, that require it, and there are certain materials that need to be shredded. So, but you'll retain a higher value if you do the manual dismantling. And it also, like I said, depends on your commodity stream that's going through and the customer requirements. Infrastructure, I started in my garage, you know, and then we moved up to a 1,000 square foot facility, 7,000 square foot, now we're in 50,000 square feet. You don't need a whole lot of space. It all depends on where you're going to start at. So you don't need to go out and buy a 100,000 square foot facility and spend millions of dollars getting everything set up. We started with a compressor from Home Depot and a couple pneumatic drills. You know, it's a minimal investment that you can make to start up your operations. Storage of equipment from the scrap metal side. A lot of stuff is stored outside in your yards. That's not good. Sometimes it can't be too bad, but sometimes it can really take away the value of the equipment if it sits out in your yard for 6 months getting rained on, snowed on. And we see it come in like that, and it's not nice. So if you can store it indoors, it's a big help. If you get into the R2, once you get into the R2 certification, the requirements get a little more specific on how to do packaging, storing equipment, labeling it. Health and safety goes back into the R2. Hazardous materials, a lot of people in the industry will talk about the hazardous items that we're using. Circuit boards are hazardous, CRTs are hazardous, and stuff like that. It's kind of an exaggeration. There is nothing that you're going to handle in those electronics that your employees are going to handle coming through that facility that is going to be a danger to them, for the most part. CRTs, start shredding them, breaking them open, they'll start flying. A little bit different scenario. Handling a circuit board is not going to endanger anybody. All right, so you got to keep it all in perspective and do a little bit of research on that. Your typical PPE that you're going to require is nothing more than gloves and safety goggles in most situations for a manual dismantling operation. Training is always a huge issue. It's a constant thing. We do monthly training in our facility. with all the employees, so it's always an ongoing thing. And a lot of that is because you're learning as you go. None of us are experts. We learn something new every week in this business. Tracking throughput, the question came up about tracking throughput. All depends on what your customer requirements are. The biggest thing that you have to have, some customers want serial number reporting back to them. No problem, we can do that. Typically, we do everything by weight. The biggest thing is being able to track where your material went, where your material came from, and where it went when it left your facility, and being able to verify that. So having good documentation on that. And then we do a mass balance. R2 doesn't really require a mass balance. We'll do a mass balance at the end of each year to look and see how our volumes match up and see if our what discrepancies we have there. Focus materials, Tracy touched on this. CRTs, batteries, circuit boards, mercuries, PCBs, items that you have to pay a little more closer attention to. And then site security, it's a big issue. For us, we just work basically off of security cameras. We don't get into checking IDs and badges at the door for the employees going in and out, stuff like that. But we have surveillance throughout the facility, and inside and outside of the facility, alarm monitoring. You do have to have secure access or storage for your data, hard drives, anything that stores data. You want to be able to store that separately. You don't want to have that open access to all the employees that are wandering through the facility. One thing to keep in mind, how it hit home for me, was I finally brought computers in from my house for recycling. All right, I had them stored in my crawl space for however many years, so I finally cleaned it out, took them into the office, took them out in the warehouse, set them down, and left, because I knew the guys were going to take care of it. And that's when it really registered with me. It's like, all right, that's my computer, and that was my son's computer that has all of his information, friends' information, pictures, personal data. So you have to take it serious, and that's, do it at your yard. Bring your computer in and just leave it out in the yard. Are you going to be happy with how they're going to treat it? So you got to make sure you have procedures and your employees have been trained to handle this stuff properly. Data destruction methods, shredding, degaussing, overwriting. We like to degauss all of our hard drives. We don't shred any of the hard drives. We lose a value. You go from a degaussed hard drive that's intact, a whole unit where the data's been wiped. We can sell or purchase at $1, $1.15 a pound. Now you shred that hard drive. Now you have aluminum breakage. So now you went from $1 a pound to you're at 45 cents a pound. Huge difference. So customers may require that to be shredded. If you can degauss is the most beneficial way, or overwriting and using that drive for reuse. Overwrite the drive. Finding downstream vendors, this is a challenge for everybody, especially once you have your certification. There are so many requirements that you have to meet. International and domestic, it's the same issue regardless of where you're going. A lot of people like to think, well, he's an R2 certified recycler. I should be able to ship to him and not have to ask him any questions. I might be R2 certified, but that doesn't mean I can't cheat. So it's still your responsibility to come check me out. Come to my facility, visit my facility, make sure I'm doing my job right, look through my paperwork, check my procedures and how I handle everything. Same thing with in the international market. Exports can be a little more difficult for tracking. We actually go overseas every year, every November and December. It's an annual trip for Terry and myself. We go to Hong Kong, we go to China. We visit all the people that we're sending material to there. There's not one downstream vendor that we have not visited their facility. So, and that's something that you need to do. You're going to look for certifications, licenses, permits, their environmental health and safety standards that they're operating on. And your downstream doesn't have to have R2 certification. They don't have to have an ISO 14000. Our primary facility that we work with in Hong Kong, they don't have any of those certifications, but they are right in line with what all the industry standards are. So just because we require it here in the US as a standard, you may not, the Chinese aren't going to find as prevalent of a standard to follow as we do here. So, and you're also looking for transparency in your downstream. If your downstream's not going to share information with you on what they're doing with the material, where they're sending it, how they're handling it, probably want to walk away from them. And that's it. So, like I said, everything else was covered before. Questions, answers, a whole bunch of them. And I have help in the audience too. I have my partner's over there. We can pick his brain. He knows scrap metal inside and out and precious metals. He's got 20 years experience. I've got 2 refurbishers in here that I can see. We've got a plastics guy over here. He was my first vendor, by the way, so he heard every dumb question on the face of the earth, so we can really beat him up too. So, question? You said The degaussing, what's the best way to describe it? It's a magnet. It's an electric magnet. So it just sends a shock to it and destroys all the data. It's not usable afterwards. So it does wipe the data, but it leaves you with an intact unit. And for our downstream on our hard drives, they're actually disassembling that hard drive and harvesting the magnets back out of it and that spindle back on there. So even when people punch it, they'll punch the hard drive, we lose our value right there too, because then they're damaging the magnets or they're damaging the spindle. So. Yes, sir.
So the magnet and the spindle is reused?
Yeah.
Reused application or first?
It'll be reused in new manufacturing. It's pretty amazing what the rest of the world does. You know, I have a huge problem with it. As Americans, we put ourselves up here at a certain level. We think it's like, no, we're amateurs, man. There's some people in other countries that are really putting us to shame on how they are processing material and reusing it. So we have a long way to go. We're a throwaway society. It's pitiful. So who else? Somebody.
So you say you do all manual disassembly. Does that mean you're still sticking with just screwdrivers and pliers, or do you have?
It's all pneumatic. Yeah, everything's pneumatic. So we have a central compressor unit. We have 16 guys on our assembly line at any given time that are doing. We can process, with 16 guys, we can process about 180,000 pounds a week. So you can push through a decent amount of volume if you're hustling. One of the problems that you run into is when you start doing the dismantling, it's a low-income, entry-level job. All right, you're not going to be able to pay somebody $14, $15 an hour to work on the disassembly line. It'd be nice if we could. We can't do that. So it's going to be an entry-level labor, minimum wage, maybe a little bit higher. So you're going to see a higher turnover. You know, you're going to get 6 months, maybe a year out of those guys, because most people aren't going to stay in a job that long. You know, they're going to look for opportunities to advance. We try to move them up through the company. We do profit sharing bonuses and things like that. But still, you're going to see a high turnover rate. So, and then that causes issues with your training, keeping them educated on how to do the sorting and stuff like that. So you need a few key people to watch over that area and then run the sorting process and stuff like that. But when it comes to actual dismantling, I'm sorry, but it's just not a high-skilled position. Anybody can do it. You know, as long as you can operate a screwdriver, you can take stuff apart.
What age do you find your age towards that?
What's that?
The older people, retirees, or the young boys?
And our disassembly guy, our youngest guy is 19 years old, and our oldest guy is probably about 63. So it's a wide assortment of people that we get in. So, and we've got a lot of, where we're based at, we're on the north side of Chicago. It's kind of a depressed area. There's an old manufacturing area. A lot of the manufacturing has moved away and stuff like that. So we have a large labor pool that we can pull from. So, and we have some transient workers, so to speak. They'll spend the winter with us. They'll spend the summer doing landscaping. So, you know, they'll move back and forth. So it's just a filler. But. 14 to 16 guys should be able to process about 180,000 pounds a week. Yeah. So it depends on the product that they're running. Sometimes we can go higher. Sometimes we get slowed down. You know. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Your source of revenue, is it primarily charging guys to destroy?
No, that'd be nice. I wish we could. So.
It's purely recovery.
You know what? The majority of our material we're getting from scrap yards. We're getting from refurbishers, other recyclers is where the majority of our material comes from. We do offer recycling services for businesses in the Chicago area. We'll go out there and pick up at their offices and what have you. But it's the same conversation that came up a couple times now, where you used to be able to charge Sims. I know they had the great model there for a number of years. I wish I could have done that. Was, you know, you charge 50 cents for everything comes in the door. You know, we're charging it for processing it. Now it's like people are saying, they have their hands out. What's it worth? You know,
So
how much can you give me?
So you're buying your material.
Yeah. So it all depends on the situation. You know, if I'm sending a truck into downtown Chicago to pick up one computer, you're going to pay me. So I am not giving you anything back. If I'm coming down to your facility and I'm picking up 2,000 units, you're going to get money back. So, yeah. You know, there's no set model to work off of. Every case is different. Every situation is different. A lot of our customers that we talk to, recyclers, it was a charge scenario for them 2 years ago. Now they're having to, you know, fill out RFPs and bid on the equipment.
How do you account for that thing with 2,000 units guaranteed that the value later is still in there? Because
we know our value. We know what it's worth coming in the door, you know, so we can figure out what we can pay them back. And it's a little bit difficult in our situation because we're an end of life. We're scrap. We treat everything as scrap. You know, so versus, you know, coming to us versus, where's Clive? Clive Hess, he's somewhere around here. He's out of Houston, he does refurbishing. He's going to know what that remarketing value is. Jim's going to know what a remarketing value is, you know. Even John with Geep, they'll be able to have, they know what they can remarket and put that back out into the public for and everything. So, you know, we would have a hard time competing against Regency or Geep in a situation like that because that's just not our business model. Where I think on the scrap side, we have a lot of potential is you already have an existing customer base. A lot of times with corporations, you're going in, you're dropping a box off at their facility and picking up every couple of months or whatever the case may be. You know, why not tell them, hey, I can take your computers out of your facility, I can take your servers and stuff like that. I have the capability to handle that and process that. A lot of companies have done that. You know, a lot of our larger customers that we work with are scrap metal yards. So, you know, they've been doing scrap metal for 80 years. And then, you know, they just piggybacked on that relationship that they already had. The other area that you have to touch on is peddlers. We get calls constantly of peddlers that want to bring stuff in. We're not geared. We can't handle that. You know, we're not set up to deal with that. So we have to turn them away. But peddlers are a great source of material. If you tell a peddler that you're going to buy PCs, you're going to buy whatever, they will find it. You know, you guys know how they work. You know, if there's an opportunity to make a buck, they're going to locate the stuff. And when you talk about volumes of materials that are being recycled, we're only recycling about 30% of the electronics that are manufactured and sold into the U.S. each year. So 70% of what's out there is still available to all of us to go get. Residential recycling only accounts for 25% of what we're doing. So that's where the biggest bulk is sitting in people's homes. You know, even me as a recycler, I have too many electronics sitting in my house that I should have brought in, you know, to the shop, and I'm just too lazy to do it. You know, but if somebody will come by my house and pick it up for me, good deal. I'll be more than happy to give it to you.
On your production as far as processing equipment, was that 90,000 pounds input or output of material as far as processing?
Input. Your input and output should be the same. Should be. When it's not, that's a bit of an issue. It's like, all right, where to go? And you got to go searching for it.
Have you figured out your average revenue for CPU? Can you tell us what it is?
No. I can't share all the secrets. What are our margins on CPUs, Terry? On whole units? Yeah. 15, 20, yeah. I mean, it's not huge. It's not huge, so. Yeah.
Did you guys hand stripping low-end items like
No. Little stuff like that, it's consumer. Right. Yeah. Your DVD players, VCR players, stuff like that, no. No, that's going to be a shred item. And then the secret's finding a place, you got to find a shredder that can handle that. You know, it's not just every run-of-the-mill facility that can shred that for you. You know, that was a 5 or 6 hour audit we did at the facility that we sent our material to be shredding. You know, they're not an R2 certified facility. They don't have any of that stuff, so we had to go through there and walk through all the steps, you know, slowly.
When you do that, when you visit one of these downstream facilities, and there are certain reports you have to generate and are certified?
Okay, can you repeat that?
You have to generate a report, keep it on file.
Yeah, we have our internal audit sheets that we do, all the forms that we have filled out that our compliance person has us fill out when we go to visit. So it's myself or somebody else in the company will go. And then before we go out, you know, if it happens to be one of our salespeople that is going to go visit a customer, well, then he's got to spend quite a bit of time with our compliance person, making sure he's trained and knows what to look for and, while he's out at that facility. So it's not just a matter of, oh, I went out, they look good. So no, there's specific questions. It's a 6-page report that we go through, quite a few questions that they got to answer for us. So, and most people are very agreeable. There's, you know, the majority of people will work with you because they understand.
We have about 20 minutes left, so let's open it up to the rest of the panel. Any questions for any of the speakers? Go ahead, Jerry.
Is the business model broken? This is going to be the computer of the future. So I asked John, don't you fear if you build huge shredders for today's PC volumes, which will soon, they are starting to decline, aren't you
sure we all have an answer, but yeah, that's a concern. But along with that, if you go through a process like Gene here, where you're doing a manual D-man, there's a lot of components in there that are still resellable, and that's what we'll go with versus shredding it. You know, shredding the value of getting that type of component, or like this, or the tablet, is less and less, right? And computers are almost dinosaurs now, and laptops are going to get that way very shortly. And yeah, you're going to have to go to some kind of D-man process to get some reuse out of there to resell, like Jim and Paul here. We're going to have to do that process. Shredders are going to be smaller. You're not going to have the huge shredders like we have. 4 of those. We got some small ones as well. But that process is going to go away, I think, in time. Jim?
There was actually an article I just read, Jerry, earlier this week, or the end of last week, on it was called The Death of the PC. And if you want to have some fun, just Google Death of the PC, and it'll give you all kinds of stories that are out there. What they're saying is the tablets are very prevalent for home-based computing, but a number of people out there, a lot of the experts that they've interviewed and stuff like that, they think that you're still going to see a large placement in the business sector. You're not going to see the prevalence of tablets there. They will come into the marketplace, but not like that we will in the homes. You know, I think in a couple of years you won't even see a PC at a home. There's no need for it.
Just to add to that, I mean, there's more and more electronic devices out there. You're just not recognizing it. To Jerry's point, it's going to be this big, right? So we're not going to have, you know, as many, you know, physically large devices. But I mean, refrigerators now talk to you. You know, air conditioners talk to you. I mean, just it's an amazing amount of assortments of home products now that have a device this size running them. That will be the future, you know, of the reuse marketplace, at least for my business, and I don't know about for the recycling.
I would say, Jerry, also just to add to that, that we decided a long time ago that the technology industry with the related hardware is going to do what it's going to do. And you can't be in business to try to change it, or you will be a buggy whip business and you'll be out of business. So you have to be prepared to change with the market conditions. So whether it's services, whether it's different types of material, that's the way.
Well, we always have it. If you look at the CRT glass crisis, and that's my choice of the word as a journalist. Do you see future crises forward? LCD panels would be the next one, possibly, that are natively difficult to handle. Are all these changes going to be healthy for manufacturing and for recycling?
Again, as they make themselves available, we're going to have to deal with it as companies and an industry, but I definitely think, you know, we will see them. It's not the end of it. So.
Okay, we've got a couple, John Powers.
What Jerry brings up is an interesting discussion, but my recommendation is to think about not just the end user viewpoint, but as time goes by, the infrastructure that supports the end users has enormous amounts, huge amounts of pretty high-end electronics. Server farms are enormous. You know, cloud computing, all that capability is going to be housed on stuff that you don't see, that you just have the end user stuff. The whole telecommunications and cable infrastructure that supports the things you use, huge amounts of very sophisticated electronics that this industry will still have to serve.
That's an excellent point, John. Just think about it nowadays. You go out to a restaurant. Now, in the old days, there'd be one TV in the corner of the thing. You go to a restaurant these days, they have electronics everywhere, in the bathrooms, on the walls. So the point is, I think everything's getting smaller, but the quantity is increasing by leaps and bounds. So, you know, overall, I think the point is, as an industry, we need to adapt. We need to change as the electronics manufacturers are changing. We need to evolve in that same, it's just a little bit of a lag. So we have time for a few more questions. Phil Fava.
So typically when you're talking about your financial assurance, it needs to be controlled by a third party, right? So not you. So it can't just be some money on the books. Most companies use things like a surety bond, or they'll put money in a fund and have it, controlled by a law firm, a third-party law firm. So when you put a value, you're going to look at all the materials you want to handle, right? Your site, if you're handling electronics, you're going to have batteries, you're going to have mercury, you're going to have all those other things that go into those materials. You cannot assign a positive value to them. But what you do want to look at is what do you have for assets, right? Are your forklifts assets, or your buildings assets? Can you put those into the costs? And really kind of giving you what it should be is all going to depend on what you're bringing in and what types of materials and what you have to handle.
Okay, I had a question back here.
How do you guys handle getting the data off like cell phones that go to your properties besides just taking the battery out? You guys, is there any way to remove that, or?
Paul, you want to handle that one?
Sure. We use a industry standard software that was developed by a software organization, and it's literally just plug and go. You press a couple of buttons and it just wipes it. There are OEM standard issued wiping, and it's you can pull it literally right off the web. What's that? So we use industry standard software that you would find kind of off the shelf.
You guys just shred them at all, or?
Shred? No, it's all data erased.
It's all data erased?
We don't shred any. Shredding to me before I came to this conference was what my daughters did on the ski slope.
Right.
Now I understand shredding differently.
Right. What about John from EAP? Do you guys shred cell phones, or?
We take the cell phones. We demand the cell phones because of the right now the boards are valued pretty high, and then we've also taken and sold parts of that, the buzzer, the ringer, the speaker. Those things have some value still.
Yeah, keep in mind the batteries in the cell phones as well. They got to be taken out.
And I also think that you guys should remember too is when you are using third-party software or OEM manufacturers' recommendations on how to wipe devices, that as a responsible recycler, you still need to validate those processes. Make sure that they're actually doing what you have intended them to do, and does it meet your client requirements? So.
We got about 10 minutes. Yes, sir.
Florida, like I'm sure many other states, we have really strict metal theft compliance things that we have to go through. And I was just curious, is E-scrap falling into that? Is it low enough value? It's kind of below that radar. As far as pictures of materials, driver's licenses, serial number reporting, any of that stuff.
So, basically, we're not, we haven't seen that we're being regulated under that metals theft for that, and you're talking pretty much over the scale type purchasing yet, but it hasn't been treated like copper has in some states. But at the same time, if you're going to be in that business, you're going to want to probably go through those same procedures in terms of checking people just to make sure that the supply source is credible.
Okay, questions?
On
Yes, sir.
the same note to that, we actually had one of our over-the-scale peddlers come in that was actually, as I like to say, borrowing electronic devices from a local telecommunications company. Unfortunately, they got arrested, but it's out there. I mean, luckily we were taking pictures of everything that this gentleman was bringing in.
Right.
If it doesn't look right, do something, take a picture.
I'll add a comment here while we have a second. I always looked at this industry as there's a lot of links and there's a long chain in getting from the beginning to the end. So you start with the collection and getting it from either a consumer or business or a government agency or wherever it's coming from. And then you've got logistics in there, you've got to move it, you got to get it to a site, And there's lots of different companies. So you've got companies that are basically just doing part of the process, and you've got some companies that are doing more links in the chain. And then basically at the end, you've got the smelters and the ultimate material recovery companies. So I think it's important to kind of keep that concept in mind. You can't really, I don't know of any company that really is doing the whole chain. There are maybe a couple out there, but pick the area that you think is going to be, fit your skill set and your capabilities within the business that you're running, and then use the other experts in the industry to help you out with the rest of the links in the chain. So that's one of the things that I would suggest here. Any other questions? Yes.
So in the second half of today's session, when we're going through and talking about the standards, we will actually have some OEM representation there. So it might be a good opportunity to really pose that question to them. All of us are very involved with the different retailers and OEMs and who those people are. But they're the ones with the money. So sometimes when they make the calls, we either do it or you lose the business. Or in some cases, you can push back and get through it. But I definitely think that there's a balance in the marketplace. So, but this afternoon would be a good time.
There's also a group called Design for Recycling. So, I mean, that's obviously, this would fall right into that category, and that's an ISRI-sponsored movement.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes. Otherwise, we get a little early departure for lunch. Anybody else? I think that's it. Please remember to fill out your evaluation forms, drop them in the back of the room, and let's give a round of applause to all of our speakers.